let's get to what the top story of the day is. And it all flows from this question that the NFL would very much, I assume, like to continue to kick down the road, but in recent days, really starting with that player video last Thursday, the commissioner's response Friday, it feels like the momentum is building for the league to do something with Colin Kaepernick, whether it's apologize, whether it's find a spot for him with a team. That isn't going away. It was on the late-night talk shows on Monday night. Jimmy Fallon mentioned it in his monologue. Trevor Noah on Comedy Central mentioned it as well. It's not going away, and here's a prime example of how it's not going away. It came up yesterday during the George Floyd funeral in Houston. The Reverend Al Sharpton delivering the eulogy at the George Floyd funeral, and Al Sharpton had a message for the commissioner regarding Colin Kaepernick.
All this family wants is justice. Oh, it's nice to see some people change their mind. The head of the NFL said, yeah, maybe we was wrong. Football players, maybe they did have the right to peacefully protest. Well, don't apologize. Give Colin Kaepernick a job back. Don't come with some empty apology. Take a man's livelihood, strip a man down of his talents, and 4 years later when the whole world is marching, all of a sudden you go and do a FaceTime talking about you sorry. Minimizing the value of our lives. You sorry? Then repay the damage you did to the career. You stood down, because when Colin took a knee, he took it for the families in this building, and we don't want an apology. We want him repaired.
You know, that's the point. And that's why Colin Kaepernick's name is back at the forefront, Chris. As we processed what happened to George Floyd on that street in Minneapolis, murdered on camera for all to see, a real-time execution broadcast around the world, thanks to the fact that everyone's carrying a camera now, it underscored the message that Colin Kaepernick was trying to send, the message that got obscured, that got ignored, that got downplayed by everyone who continued to cling to the idea that it was inherently and automatically disrespectful of the flag, the country, and the military to kneel during the national anthem. The NFL blackballing Colin Kaepernick. And look, we know by now that he wasn't given equal treatment as it relates to other available quarterbacks. He's never had a tryout. He had one visit in 3 years. And, and so that's why the call is there, to give him what was taken from him 3 years ago, Chris.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was screwed over. There's no doubt about it. He was a man that was ahead of the times. And hey, the simple fact of the matter is white America just didn't want to open their eyes to the facts of what is going on with police brutality or social injustices or anything like that. Now, at least I'm not going to say white America's eyes are totally open right now, but one of them's peaked open, where it's like, whoa, wait, some stuff's going on. You woke some people up here. And of course, this reignites the Colin Kaepernick conversation because, yeah, the NFL did him wrong. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Mike, you know, I wasn't doing quarterback lists, but I've had people ask me over the last few days. You actually text me yesterday going, you know, where would Colin Kaepernick land in the top 40 now? And I said, I don't know. It's been too long. I don't think I would put him in the top 40 right now. But to the point is, when he was blackballed by the NFL after the 2016 season, there is like no doubt, you can't argue it if you're watching football. He was in the top half of the league as far as starting quarterbacks, or at least the top 20. You know, when you talk about a guy who's 6'3.5" and has unbelievable speed and an unreal arm and is battle tested and played in the Super Bowl and was down and brought his team back. I mean, there's really no other way to explain why Colin Kaepernick was not in the league. Of course, he was a starting caliber quarterback. And at the very least, even if he didn't like that because of some of the issues or whatever it may be, he'd be one of the best backups in football. So he was totally done wrong by the NFL because of his stand and because white America didn't like it and we didn't want to hear it. So we changed the subject and kind of made him the bad guy in a lot of ways. And that's why we are where we are now. But I think a lot of people have realized that they were in the wrong and that this is a real thing.
Malcolm Jenkins, the Saints safety, appeared on CBS this morning yesterday. He was asked by Gayle King if the Roger Goodell video was enough of a way to make things right for the players regarding everything that's happened. Here's Malcolm Jenkins.
I still don't think they've gotten it right until they apologize specifically to Colin Kaepernick or sign him to a team. I don't think that they will end up on the right side of history. At the end of the day, they have listened to their players. They've donated money. They've created an Inspire Change platform. They've tried to do things up until this point. It's been one player in particular that they have not, or that they've ignored and have not acknowledged, and that's Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, was that the big elephant in the room that Colin Kaepernick wasn't mentioned in Roger Goodell's statement?
I think so. Yeah, that's the only thing that people want to hear. If it's not going to correct that or acknowledge that, then everything else, doesn't need to be said.
Malcolm Jenkins again on CBS this morning. And look, that's one of the things that keeps coming up, regardless of whether or not one of the 32 teams will offer Colin Kaepernick a job or at a minimum just bring him in for a tryout and see what he currently has. Should the commissioner have mentioned Colin Kaepernick by name in that video response last week to the video from the players? And remember, the players wanted the league to admit it was wrong for silencing players, and obviously Colin Kaepernick is the one who was most clearly silenced. The response was the NFL, via the commissioner, said it was wrong for not listening. Should the name Colin Kaepernick have been brought up by the commissioner? Should the commissioner or someone else from the league come out now and say unequivocally they apologize to Colin Kaepernick?
I think so. I mean, yes and yes, both. First off, I do think that the NFL should have addressed Colin Kaepernick, or Roger Goodell should have addressed it in that statement he made. This is a guy whose life's been turned upside down, and obviously it's turned the NFL world upside down a little bit too, to where players are very passionate about the subject, and of course feel that Colin Kaepernick was wronged in a very bad way, to where, hey, he's the face of this movement. There's no doubt about that. So I do think an apology or some sort of acknowledgement to Colin Kaepernick and the fact that, he was leading the charge in a fight way before its time, or, we just didn't listen, like I said before. But I do now look at it and think, there probably needs to be some sort of statement going forward from the NFL, just to, again, acknowledge that Colin Kaepernick was extremely smart. And, of course, doing something that he felt was right for people and the right decision, and not necessarily popular in everybody's eyes, but he opened up eyes and not enough. And, again, I think they should apologize and nonetheless and just say, man, if we would have listened to you and taken you more seriously, maybe we wouldn't be here right now.
I know there's a lot of pride, there's a lot of ego that gets tied up in admitting that someone was wrong, and there's a lot of poison between the NFL and Colin Kaepernick because of the collusion claim that he made. It was litigated, and when your lawyer is asking tough, pointed questions to owners, that creates hard feelings. Owners don't like being asked questions of any kind about why they've made decisions or didn't make certain decisions. They don't like to be accused of anything, and very good lawyers know how to create that setting and create that tone. That makes it hard to build a bridge, but I think at this point, we all kind of realize it's necessary. And I think that's the awakening that the NFL needs to have, that it needs to find a way to make it right with Colin Kaepernick. And it can't be artificial. It can't seem forced. It can't seem contrived. It has to be organic. It has to be authentic. It has to be natural. And the problem is, the longer it takes them to do it, the more contrived it's going to look. The natural time to do it would have been at the moment the rest of us were saying, see, Colin Kaepernick had a point, and we should have listened to him instead of silencing him. And if you're not going to do it in the aftermath of the Drew Brees issue from last week, it just becomes more glaring the longer that you'll wait. Now, apologizing is one thing, employing is another. Al Sharpton said employ. Others have said apologize. Matt Ryan, quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, chimed in on his belief as to whether or not Colin Kaepernick should have a job right now in the NFL. Here's Matt Ryan.
You know, Colin being back in the league, I think he should have every opportunity to. You know, he created awareness for a situation that, you know, people, it's taken some time, but people are becoming, you know, more active in terms of their response to it. And so I think from that standpoint, his you know, protest is being heard at this point. It might have taken too long. And, you know, but I think he should have every opportunity to have a job and to have a spot in this league.
That's Matt Ryan, who entered the league 3 years before Colin Kaepernick. You know, Kaepernick's only 32. As quarterbacks go, that's smack dab middle of the prime, right? And for a guy who hasn't been out of the league for 3 years, at a point where there's an understanding of defenses and pre-snap looks, and that computer that is your brain has seen so much that you're really getting into that sweet spot where you've still got the physical skills, but you've seen enough and you've experienced enough where you can be a high-level performer really into your 40s, as we've seen, or at least close to your 40s before it starts to fall apart. So here's the question. And we'll take up the physical reality. Before we even get, because I made the point earlier this week that now is the time for Colin Kaepernick's name to be moved back into the column, back onto the list of the guys who are available. And every team has that list. If you've ever been to a team facility, and Chris, I know you have, they've got I'm talking about anyone out there who may be listening. What they have somewhere in the facility, there's a room that has a list of all the players on their roster separated by position. And then elsewhere, and everybody does it differently, but the teams that have the high-tech, nice facilities.
You're getting the gist of it.
Right. So you've got every position, and you've got the depth chart. And then you've got a list for each position of who you would call if and when one of these guys gets injured, can't get it done, whatever the case may be. And the list, you know, it goes 8-9 players deep. Running back, quarterback, receiver, cornerback, every position. And it gives you a sense of how interchangeable these parts are and how heartless of a business it is when it comes down to the churn. Like, oh, this guy's up, take his name off, pull another one on. Let's call this guy. I mean, that's what they have to do. The problem is Colin Kaepernick's name hasn't been on that list. Everyone's been afraid to consider him for a job. And it started in early 2017 when the false narratives were being fed to people in the media who were lapping it up like a bowl of fresh milk straight from the udder that, well, he doesn't really want to play. Well, he's a vegan. I mean, Tom Brady's been sucking down avocado ice cream for years now, and we applaud him. Well, he's a vegan. We can't have somebody who doesn't eat meat playing quarterback in the National Football League. I mean, what the hell was all this nonsense? And there weren't many that saw through it. There were plenty who were just going along. I think they sensed, hey, you know what? It's in my interest to go along with this, even if it's wrong. It was wrong. It was wrong then, and it's wrong now. So the question is, are we at a moment where, I don't know, half, a fourth, any of the coaches, GMs, and owners will say, okay, here's our list of available quarterbacks. The first guy we're going to call is this guy. The second we're going to call is this guy. Is Colin Kaepernick going to be on that list for any teams?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, Mike. And I think it's dicey. And again, I want to make it be known here and be very clear. I'm all for what Colin Kaepernick did in the fight and everything about it. He got screwed over, like I said. But I think when you purely talk football, okay, and you just get into that now, and I know it's not fair that we're in this situation because the NFL, they dug this hole, but I do think realistically as an NFL head coach right now, you're going to look at Colin Kaepernick and go, man, do I really want to bring this guy in? And, most teams, the way it is, they keep 2 quarterbacks. Now you can keep 3. But regardless, they're going to go, do I want to bring him in and have the distraction? 1. Okay, we know that. All right, blah, blah, blah. But the bigger thing is the coaches are going to go, man, 3 years out of football. That's a long time, especially at the quarterback position. I mean, The quarterback position is the hardest position in all of sports to emulate what you have to do on the field. And he's not getting to practice with teams or do anything like that. So, no, he won't be as mentally sharp. Yes, physically, even though if he's in shape, which I know he is, it's still going to be different than getting used to playing football again, too, let alone – yes, I think teams are going to be reluctant just because it's been so long right now. I missed a year of football, and I remember coming back, Mike, and playing my first preseason game, feeling like, whoa, I got to put the training wheels on here again. I don't feel comfortable. And then the last part of it, Mike, to me is if they do bring him in, and now let's say he doesn't have a great training camp in preseason, and you have to cut him. I think teams will be very scared of what that might mean and the backlash they'll get and the conversations that'll get started there as well. So I think that's what makes it really difficult.
This is deja vu all over again because we had this same conversation on Monday because my point continues to be don't worry about the backlash you're going to get when you bring him in, and don't worry about the backlash you're going to get if you decide to let him go. One of the new tweaks of the CBA allows teams to have two members of the practice squad who are as veteran as they care to be. It can be a 40-year-old guy on the practice squad. He can be around for 20 years in the NFL. He can be on the practice squad. You could carry him on the practice squad. And when you think about Al Sharpton's words, that they need to repair Colin Kaepernick, maybe we need to think about this not in terms of, well, just put his name back on the list. If a quarterback gets injured, if our backup's not getting it done in training camp or in preseason, let's bring someone in for a tryout and see if he's better. Maybe it's something more than that. Maybe it's going to take something, and maybe the right thing to do here, given what was done to him. This is different than the usual situation where a guy's name is on a list of players who get called in the event there's a need at that position. This is a guy who, as you said, Chris, was screwed by the NFL, technical term.
Right.
Screwed by the NFL, screwed by the teams, shunned, blackballed for 3 years, filed a collusion claim, and the NFL wrote him a check. How often does the NFL voluntarily write a check in response to any type of illegal claim? They fight, and, they win. And even when they do settle it, like the concussion case, you look at it and say, man, it would have been a hell of a lot worse if it had gone south for them in court. And maybe Colin Kaepernick's case would have been the same way. Regardless, at some level, and even though every settlement says there is no admission of liability inherent to this agreement, the reality is you're not signing the check because you have no liability at all. There is some responsibility there, or you wouldn't be doing it, especially if it's a significant check like it was. So, at this point, given everything that's happened, does he merit something more than just being treated like any other 32-year-old free agent quarterback? Should there be an effort by the league to find a team like they did with Michael Sam? When they wanted Michael Sam in the league, they found a team to draft him.
They called teams and got it done.
They got a deal with Jeff Fisher to draft him in round 7, and then when the Rams cut him, they got the Cowboys to put him on the practice squad. I remember Peter King reporting that from Denver, I think it was, or Seattle or somewhere on that opening night of the season, 2014. It would have been Seattle. I don't know. I think that maybe we need. When I heard that word repair yesterday, it got me thinking. This is something more than the normal course of business.
Well,
they need to repair the damage they did to Colin Kaepernick, and I don't know that they're willing to do it, but that's maybe what they need to do.
Well, to sign him to a team would certainly go a long way. I do think it would kind of bring everybody together in the league, and maybe it would start a different type of awareness to start the season. Maybe there would be a different type of message. Maybe kneeling for the anthem wouldn't happen and that not become an issue if Colin Kaepernick does get signed by a team. And you're right, this new rule within the CBA to keep veteran players, on the practice squad as long as you want, it's very real. That gives these NFL teams less wiggle room to justify them, not bringing in Colin Kaepernick. Listen, I'll say this. If I was a head coach, I'd bring him in. There's no doubt about it. I'd bring him in. I'd work him out. Let's see what he's got. Okay? I don't think you can be hurt by that. You're going to have to deal with it. Deal with some scrutiny and whatever else and some hoopla. Who cares? But I think realistically, just because you and I both know coaches, I do think the 3-year absence, right or wrong, and we know it was wrong, okay, is going to stop some coaches from doing it. We have an influx of good quarterbacks in football right now. And yeah, I think a lot of coaches are conservative and don't want to deal with the hoopla to go on top of that. So, Mike, here's the other angle.
But the whole point. But here's the whole. Let me hang on. Let me respond to that. The whole point is tough crap. You got to deal with the hoopla here. It's part of repairing the damage that was done to him. And tough crap if he's been out of it for 3 years. It's your fault that he's been out for 3 years, not his. You have to repair the damage. You have to find a way to give him equal treatment. You have to find a way to give him equal footing. You have to find a way to assimilate him back into the league. And you know what? If they apply a different standard for a short period of time to Colin Kaepernick, do you really think there's going to be a locker room schism over, well, Colin Kaepernick's looking pretty rough here. Hey, he's maybe fourth on the depth chart. No. They're probably going to cut him. Or do you think the players would say, you know what, he's working his way back after a 3-year absence that the teams and the league caused? We're fine with Colin Kaepernick making the team over the third stringer, over the second stringer, because we know what he's going to be, because we've seen what he can be.
Yes. I mean, listen, all that's real. The players are going to support it 100%. I just think there will be. Listen. Again, this is not me, so don't attack me, Mike. I'm just telling you. I think there'll be trepidation. Just my years of knowing these head coaches. I know it's wrong.
This is part of what we're undergoing a shift. We're undergoing.
I get it.
The world has changed. That's the point. These coaches
you didn't
and
let me
teams
finish
need
my
to
point
change
the first
too.
time around.
All right, go ahead.
Well, I
go
was
ahead
just
with
saying,
your fancy point.
Okay, because it's hard to force any guy onto a football team for a coach where his job's dependent on it. No matter how good the cause is, it is. It's just hard. That's the reality of it. I'm not trying to say don't do it. My other thought of this is, if there's a team or no teams that want to sign him, NFL, why don't we hire Colin Kaepernick to be the face of the movement? Long-term contract, Colin Kaepernick, NFL, social injustice, police, minority communities, all of it. He could be the guy that way too. I'm just throwing that out there. I want to see him play football. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say anything different than that. But I just know these coaches, and I'm with you. It's stupid. I'd give them a shot. And I think the NFL needs to call teams and try to force their hand a little bit. But I do think that, you heard reports. I saw a report from Adam Schefter last night, right? Or one of the insiders that was saying that they thought GMs would be, that wouldn't happen, that nobody would sign Colin Kaepernick, right or wrong. And I know that's
carry
wrong.
The water.
Yeah.
Go ahead, carry the water for the league, carry the water for the teams. I love it when the insiders who need to have these great relationships with the teams will carry the water to make it less uncomfortable. See, that's the problem. The teams are getting uncomfortable, so they are turning to people in the media to help make them comfortable again. And any reporter that pushes this crap, I'm going to call out. I want to find out who said that, and I'm going to call him out. Barry Wilner, the AP last night, with a column actually suggesting, and I assume with a straight face, that Colin Kaepernick is better off not returning to the NFL because he has a bigger platform now than if he was in the NFL, is nonsense. And it makes me think someone fed it to him as part of this symbiosis that exists between the league and the media that covers it. There's some back scratching that happens from time to time. Hey, Barry, we got an idea for you. Have you ever thought about it this way? Boy, that would really be a good column. Colin Kaepernick's better off not being in the NFL. See, right now, they're on the ropes. And the question is, are they going to get off the ropes with the help of the media? Or is this movement going to punch them through the ropes and get them to do the right thing? And Chris, you've said it many times. You know how these coaches are. And I would prefer that to be conjugated as, I know how these coaches have been. Now the question is, will they change? Will they change the way they think about their team? Will they change the way they think about a backup quarterback? Will they change their willingness to embrace a distraction because it's the right thing to do? And if the NFL really wants it to happen, there is a deal to be struck with an owner somewhere for a Super Bowl, for a draft, for something. If you really want to get it done, folks, that's the way the sausage is made. A lot of deals get done. That's a way to do it. And let me just say this as we wrap up this topic for now. George Floyd's funeral occurred yesterday in Houston. Cal McNair, the owner of the team, attended. Bill O'Brien, the coach and the GM, attended. We heard last week very heartfelt comments from Bill O'Brien in the aftermath of this movement that has been sparked over the past 16 days. Look at the Texans quarterback depth chart and ask yourself, is A.J. McCarron the right guy to back up Deshaun Watson? Does A.J. remember we heard 3 years ago, well, we can't really sign Colin because his skill set's different than our starter, right? And then we pointed out how many teams have a backup whose skill set doesn't match the starter. Whose skill set, Chris, is closer to Deshaun Watson? Colin Kaepernick or A.J. McCarron?
Yes, it's Colin Kaepernick. It's not even close. We're talking about a guy who can sit in the pocket and throw lasers all over the field. And then another guy, when the pocket breaks down, he can run and make things happen with his legs. And Watson and Kaepernick are very similar that way. And you're right. It's a BS excuse that everybody used in the NFL back then. And that makes a lot of sense, too, down there in Houston. You're certainly right. Colin Kaepernick could certainly help out that quarterback room. There's no doubt about that.
And let me just say this then as we take our break. And I don't want to put unfair pressure on anyone, but I think the obvious outcome here, and I think the right team to do it, and when we think of the word repair, we think of the issues that happened a few years ago in that Texans locker room with Dwayne Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, the statement that was made by the late Bob McNair, the founder of the team. Maybe the repair happens mutually. Maybe the repair is that Bill O'Brien, the coach and GM of the team, with the approval, not just consent, but with the active approval of Cal McNair, makes Colin Kaepernick a member of the team with an opportunity to compete to be the backup quarterback for 2020 to Deshaun Watson. What's wrong with any of that, right? I think it makes perfect sense. It's one of those things that's hiding in plain sight. And I think if anybody right now should consider doing it, the team that is in the city where George Floyd was born, in this moment, during this movement, that would go a long way toward beginning the process of repairing. The repair wouldn't be complete, Chris, but it would at least be a start.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And it does make a lot. There's a few teams, Mike, I've thought about, like teams that can handle the Colin Kaepernick situation. And a guy like Deshaun Watson and Billy O'Brien certainly could do it. I thought about Kansas City with Patrick Mahomes being the leader of the way. That would be a great way to do it, too. And then, of course, the Baltimore Ravens. Hey, John Harbaugh's brother, Jim, coach Colin Kaepernick. You know, I think they're the type of team and have a culture there that could support it and be all around it. And, of course, he fits the skill set of the starting quarterback. It would fit in the offense. So, you know, those are a few that ring true. But I think you bring up a lot of good points there, Mike.
Bottom line is this isn't going away. In response to the column last night from the Associated Press suggesting that Colin Kaepernick is better off not playing, I actually put the reporter hat on, made some phone calls. Bottom line is this. He's in shape, he's ready, and he's more motivated than ever to play. So, and I know at some point he's going to have to accept a veteran minimum contract. At some point he's going to have to say, something other than I want $15 million. But to get back in, if he has the right expectations, the time is right to do it. We'll see if somebody does the right thing.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.